Well, hello everybody. Welcome into the Great Atmosphere Show. I'm Zach here with you on this Monday, January 15th of 2024. Just want to take a look first at some lake effect snow bands that are coming off of Lakes Erie and Ontario into the upstate of New York. I know there's a pretty big football game going on today that actually was postponed because of one of these lake effect snow bands up in Buffalo against the Pittsburgh Steelers. Originally it was supposed to be scheduled for Sunday afternoon and is now scheduled today for Monday late afternoon. They got over 8 feet of snow in the span of less than 24 hours, as is typical with some of these lake effect snow bands. You can see it's effectively what happens here is that the warm air on the lake, whenever you get warm air right above a moist surface like that, and cold air obviously above it due to the significant cold air that we've seen over the North American subcontinent over the past few days, you end up getting essentially a fire hose of snow in whatever direction that the wind happens to be going. And the longer, or the more parallel the wind is to the length of the lake, the more snow is created. So in this case, you can see that the wind is blowing from the southwest up into the northeast, and since that is the general direction of the longest axis of Lake Erie and Ontario, the longer that moisture and precipitation can go over the lake itself, the more moisture it'll pick up and the more snow it'll dump. So that's what they're going through at the moment, and it's a pretty interesting weather phenomenon that you don't see every day. We actually saw some of this actually in Dallas, Texas, the past couple of days with some of their local water reservoirs giving out, instead of the expected ice and freezing rain that the area was expecting, they actually got accumulative snow in some regions of the DFW region this weekend. So just a little fun thing. For some reason, this is not able to be reached. There we go. Okay, so this is what we're looking at nationwide now from a satellite point of view. We can see the primary crux of our cold front that is making its way, our Arctic cold front, making its way all the way through the deep south, setting record lows and highs pretty much everywhere that it goes. And the majority of the precipitation. Now, last week we did denote from our model guidance that the primary area of freezing rain and ice accumulation would be in this Texarkana region, and that has largely proven to be correct. There is a significant amount of snowpack and ice accumulation over the greater southern central states. And you can see just by looking at the snow on the ground here over the entire course of the Central Plains and the Rockies and the Cascades, this has been quite the system that is going to leave a quite lasting impact of snowpack, and there will be some significant meltwater that the area will surely really appreciate come springtime in the event that we get any kind of drought. Obviously, melting snow is the reason that all these areas can continue to get the necessary moisture that they need in order to plant. So taking a look at what this means from our mesoscale analysis, you can see our general trough line dipping down. Looks more, and it's still maintaining that positive tilt, which is in this general area right here. If you go from point A to point B here and you're pointing in a general up direction, that's a positively tilted trough. Generally, we see overrunning in the eastern side of the United States whenever this occurs. That just means that we'll have high moisture content come in from the Gulf, meeting cold air at the same time from the Central Plains, and the end result is a mishmash of slush in the lower Mississippi River Valley region, which is exactly what we're experiencing today. So what does that technically look like right now as far as temperatures? Temperatures, well, it's being a little bit slow, so bear with me. But effectively, actually, there we go. Sorry about that. I didn't exit my drawing. So current temperatures, you can see that insane gradient that we currently have. Right now, it's reading 12 degrees Fahrenheit in Nashville. And then just a hop, skip, and a jump away, down in Atlanta, it's 60 degrees, almost a 50-degree disparity just between Nashville and Atlanta by virtue of that Arctic cold front. Arctic cold fronts are, generally speaking, a lot more powerful in terms of their cold air density than a polar front. If you were to go in like regular ranks, you would have your subtropical lows, which would produce your typical cold fronts that we would see in the spring, fluctuations of that bring the thunderstorms and whatnot. Then we'll have your polar fronts, which is generally more common in the late fall, mid, and winter, obviously. And then every now and again you get an Arctic front. So air that is typically supposed to be up in the Arctic Circle has made its way down into the center part of the continent here in North America. And this is about 1:40 in the afternoon, so we're close to getting highs for the day. These numbers will be considerably lower going into the night. And you can see actually what that temperature anomaly will look like going forward. This is currently what it looks like, and you can just see this cold air just being shoveled in. And the reasoning behind that is we see these wind bars here. Wind barbs are in the direction that the wind is coming from. And you see these little prongs right there showing just how fast that this wind speed is. This is about a mile up in the atmosphere, mind you, but the result is still the same. The cold air will still sink down into the surface. And you can just see it's just a channel, just an absolute funnel of cold air meeting this very stubborn area of warm and moist air that is from the Gulf. Really interesting winter kind of setup here. And as we go forward in time, you can see that, look, this air is getting all the way past the Red River or the Rio Grande border of Texas and Mexico, and some of these values are 15 degrees below normal, reaching all the way down past well into the middle of the Gulf as we go forward in time. And look at this. This is probably going to be our coldest time. It will be Tuesday night into Wednesday. Just the entire eastern half of the country, with the exception of southern Florida, is going to be underneath essentially some of the coldest air that it's seen in quite a long time, some of which they've never seen values this cold. And we can see this from our record-breaking temperatures across the United States. You can see these blues that you'll see on a loop as the cold air funnels in. Those are all breaking daily record lows. If you see any black circles, it's tying and breaking a monthly record low. And if you see any black circles with a white cross in it, that would denote an all-time record low. And you see some of them, I saw a few of them up in Montana, mainly daily record lows being broken throughout the course of the southern central plains in Texas. But this is quite a significant cold air system, and it's going to have some ramifications quite a bit over the next few days, as not a lot of this snow and ice is going to melt very easily going forward, at least for the next 3 or 4. Taking a look at what some of that temperature means, and I've only got Charlotte looking at Charlotte at the moment in terms of what the model guidance is looking at for temperatures. You can see the ECMWF, the Euro, in black, the GFS in yellow, and the National Blend of Models in green. This is essentially what they're predicting the high temperature or the low temperature, to be at about 6 p.m. And or that wouldn't be the low. It's just what they're predicting for. Actually, no, we have the hourlies down here. My mistake about that. This is every 6 hours, so we'll go forward. We're at 40s, 50s, kind of our last little hurrah here in the southeast of warm air before we start dipping down Tuesday and Wednesday. You can see that denoted the frost zone from that 32 to 36 degree mark. I would generally pay more attention to the National Blend of Models. That generally does a better job of denoting what the actual temperature will be. But of course, this just simulates confidence. And you can see in a general pattern, we have our first big decline in temperatures here in the southeast in the early parts of the week. Then we go slightly back up. We'll hit another maximum as the cold air starts to regenerate and that first surface low starts to move off. And then again, we'll have another, and this is the problem time here in the southeast this weekend. So Saturday nights into Monday morning, actually all the way through Monday into Tuesday morning, we are looking at some pretty severe cold coming in the southeast before we see another warming trend coming in the next week, which will bring hopefully another. Well, I say hopefully. That's our next chance of precipitation and our next chance of some dynamic weather systems. But until then, we're going to get some cold, dry air funneled into our area and the latter parts of the weekend. Looking at what we've actually experienced precipitation-wise throughout the past 72 hours, or last 7 days, this is quite significant for the eastern half of the U.S. We see some areas specifically in our normal spots in the far western mountains of North Carolina and upstate South Carolina, receiving about 5-ish, 6 inches of rain. Same up in New England and Rhode Island and eastern Mass. We have the St. Louis regions and St. Louis region, generally speaking, experiencing quite a bit of rainfall. We have the Ozarks, and then the deep south and mid central Alabama, Mississippi, and the general megalopolis of Atlanta experiencing the same amount of rainfall. And in this area, it's not necessarily just liquid precipitation; it's also ice, sleet, and snow. And these are quite significant values in those respects as well, due to the ratio that goes involved with creating this map. So quite a moist environment, and we can't forget about these giant values that we're seeing on the Cascadian Plateau. It's just been an absolute torrent of moisture that's just throwing itself into the wall of cold air that is the Rocky Mountains right now. Some of these areas haven't received accumulative or big amounts of snow in years, and now they're getting up to just feet of snow by the day. Quite an interesting setup up there for sure. Cascades getting hit quite a bit. Sierra Nevada hasn't really gotten their fair share of the snowpack yet, but hopefully that'll be coming here soon in the next month or so. Taking a look at how the National Weather Service views snowfall over just the past 3 days, we see quite a bit of lake effect and results of that blizzard that we saw earlier or later on in the week previous. This is inches of snow, and we can see we're getting up in the northern parts of Michigan and the UP. We got multiple feet of snow. The Rockies and mainly the Oregonian, Cascadian Plateau regions, Bend, and up near the Washington border, all along pretty close to the I-5 corridor. The I-5 corridor got just absolutely slammed with ice. Probably one of my UNC Charlotte colleagues, Holden LaCroix, who is a forecaster out in Oregon, said that this is the worst that he's seen the northern I-5 corridor in all the years that he's been there. Pretty interesting stuff. And then taking a look at the current radar, you can see just the result of that overrunning, that merging of those warm, moist airs and cold continental air masses, creating this general, not severe by any means. It's just overrunning flow. There is no low center here, so if there were a low center, we'd expect a significant highly more energy in the system, as a low, generally speaking, would be here. It'd be drawing in moisture, it'd be increasing upper level wind speeds, and generally speaking, it would be a much stronger system. But we don't have that. It's just overrunning two converging air masses with no general vorticity involved in the components. It's just dynamically lifted, or thermodynamically lifted, I should say, throughout the course of it. So we see snow extending all the way from the Texarkana region all the way through upper portions of the deep south, Mississippi, Alabama, getting some pretty appreciable snowfall. The whole state of Tennessee, and then getting up into the Blue Ridge, and definitely have some reports. So it's interesting to see that this forecast did verify. GFS actually had the best look at this coming in. Euro had a better understanding of what was going on with the ice in the Ozarks and the Texarkana region and the Southern Plains, but the GFS actually had this element of the whole of Central Virginia getting a little bit of snowfall, probably about 1 to 3 inches in most parts throughout the course of the rest of the day, and then this will move up into New England. A new low will form off of the coast as this cold air makes its way off to the Atlantic Ocean and interacts with the Gulf Stream, and we'll start getting another round of precipitation up in New England and the Northeast. This is kind of just a representation of what that looks like in terms of that cold air. See the cold air mass. This is also dew points. So the warm moist air will be denoted by these greens and yellows, and then the cold dry air will be denoted with these blues and purples. And you can see just that channel of cold air. We have our main central our lower or surface low that's just spinning around in the Hudson Bay, just channeling all this in, and then we'll have our general Bermuda high out here channeling some more Gulf moisture into the area, just kind of like two opposing forces, and wherever that median lies, as long as there's no surface trough that cups all the way down here and starts to cut off and create more vorticity, this is generally just two combining air masses that are interacting at this moment. So pretty interesting to see that on a global scale as these two giant forces start to work in tandem and against one another. Taking a look at our all hazards index right now, we can see the results of such a boundary. We have winter storm warnings throughout the course of that particular region we just mentioned, and also just general storm warnings in general. That's kind of an interesting way to put it, storm warning. I'm pretty sure that means ice storm warning. So apologies about the misspelling right there, but ice storm warnings extending all the way down into the New Orleans region, Houston, Austin, even I know areas down to the coast, Corpus Christi in Texas. These are ERCOT and the Energy Regulatory Agency and the Republic of Texas, as it is, getting its first big shot again since the winter of 2021, when it had that massive power failure in that particular region. We'll see what the end result of this particular system ends up being. Big freeze warnings, hard freeze warnings all throughout, wind chill advisories behind that cold front. And then we have winter weather advisories that are going to be moving up and into the northeast as we go forward in time. And we still see the results of our river flood advisories from rivers that just have not been able to get the water out of their tributaries as of yet. But looking forward ahead, it might get an opportunity to dry out in the next few days. So let's take a look at the next few days and what that looks like. Let's see in the NAM 3 kilometer. This is looking at about right now. This is where we're currently at. We'll see the end result of that precipitation start to peter its way out. The moisture generally, as the front starts to bend a little bit, kind of gets cut off in terms of the moisture return. And as this low starts to form off of the Carolina coast, you'll see the end result that most of the moisture will start coming off on this end. So as the low comes around, this is the general way of the moisture return. And then coming off of it, obviously this general region is dry, so there's not much moisture to come from once the low starts to form off the Carolina coast. Taking a look at what the ICON model is currently predicting in terms of snowfall for this current system. Pretty interesting accumulations, I should say, throughout Tennessee, 4 to 5 inches throughout the central Nashville region. And then we get up in the areas of like Bristol, Murfreesboro, Abingdon, that kind of region down in Virginia, making its way all the way over 2 to 3 inches throughout the course of central Virginia. But that's essentially all that it's wrote in that particular region. But of course, that region hasn't seen appreciable snowfall in quite some time, so it's interesting to be able to see that. Taking a look at what it's going to be looking like in the next few days, comparing, or actually this is going into next week. So comparing both our big flagship models, the GFS from the American and the Euro and the ECMWF, GFS on the left, Euro on the right. You can see there's quite a bit of model agreement once this system starts to push through. You can see the low center forming off of the New England coast, the southern New England coast. It'll start to push in. And then the end result is high pressure. You can see that denoted in this general region of both models right here. This is, generally speaking, cold and dry air. We talked about how that was going to be a major part of the next few days. Cold and dry air will dominate. And then moving forward, we have our next system that'll come through. It seems the GFS is a little bit more bullish in terms of moisture return on this particular system. As it comes through, we'll see where that rain-snow line is depicted over the next few days. It seems to be a little bit further north in the ECMWF model guidance. We see more of an icing, and the GFS is trying to give more of a snow return for the western side of the Blue Ridge Mountains. But this storm will ultimately pull off. It won't provide as much of a snow issue here in the southeast as today's will. GFS once again bullish on central Virginia getting more snowfall. Not the case in the Euro. And then we see that high pressure really start to build in. This is where the coldest of the cold air sits, and high pressure will dominate in this respect. There will be no cloud deck, so all of the Earth's radiative heating that it typically puts out during the night, the infrared heating, will escape to the atmosphere or won't get trapped underneath any clouds. So nights are going to be particularly frigid. I know here in Charlotte and areas around it will be getting down into the high teens, around 18, 19 degrees Fahrenheit over that course time period. And the most interesting part of this is actually the model agreement, I think, going into next week, because that high pressure that we talked about, remember the airflow pattern around high pressure moves anticyclonically, which means that if this high pressure, anytime that high pressure sits off of the Carolina coast like this, generally speaking, remember it goes in this motion. So generally speaking, it goes like this. Look at where the moisture is coming from. When high pressure sits off of the Carolina coast, it opens up the Gulf of Mexico in terms of moisture return. And look, we got moisture from the Gulf making its way all the way up into Minnesota, Wisconsin. Now, the good thing, I suppose that you would call it the good thing, is that this also brings in warmer, moister air. So snow and ice won't be as significant of a concern. However, once the next system starts to make its way in, and it will, as we see from the West Coast starting to get little perturbations on this side. And this entire time, also, the West Coast is getting hammered. I should mention that as well. It's going to be quite a significant next few days for the West Coast. But once those little perturbations and lee side lows start to make their way, there should be another panhandle low that makes its way here. That's when we can, once they start interacting in this kind of fashion, in terms of flow, that's when this will start to pull in more cold air behind it. And then also it'll start increasing the vorticity and the rotation of some of these storms. So there is a more distinct possibility of some thunderstorms, like legitimate thunderstorms in this area, which is mainly depicted by the GFS in this particular model run. But that's ultimately what's going to be our next major precipitation maker and major storm system generator. But until we get to that point, it'll be cold and it'll be dry, following our next couple of small systems that are making its way through today and Thursday. And this is generally reflected in the 10-day Euro precipitation anomaly. This is just averages, essentially, and this is at the end of the 10 days. The Euro is expecting the generalized southeast to be largely drier than normal, but we can see at the very end of it the beginnings of that moisture return from the Gulf, which shows that model agreement is starting to ring true in a lot of, especially, this is obviously the Euro, so the Euro is going to predict that, but ultimately we can see this in the Climate Prediction Center as well. In the 6 to 10 day temperature outlook, you can see the beginning. The West Coast, obviously, very, very wet and warm. Oh, sorry. There we go. You see the West Coast is very, very wet and warm. And the beginnings of that high pressure starting to build in and moving off of the East Coast comes in at 6 to 10 days, and then we can look at 8 to 14 days, and there we go. We see that the Gulf is officially completely opened up, generally speaking, providing moisture for most of the contiguous U.S., and ultimately is responsible for well above average temperatures in that 8 to 14 temperature day outlook. Ultimately, though, weeks 3 to 4 going into early parts of February, temperatures kind of return to the wintry norm, according to the CPC, and precipitation values are, generally speaking, above average in the southwest, as that high pressure probably starts to move more towards the central United States, and more cold, dry air fills in behind it. So interesting little setup we got going on. Not anything crazy to write home about in terms of what potential snowfall or storm systems are coming forward in the next few days, but certainly quite an interesting outlook in general for the next couple, as this overrunning positively tilted trough makes its way through and delivers Arctic air to essentially everybody. It is a winter in all senses of temperature, not necessarily precipitation for us in the southeast, but certainly will become quite frigid over the course of the next 36 to 48 hours. Once again, folks, my name is Zach. I appreciate you tuning in today to today's great atmosphere video. I'll be back tomorrow with some more analysis, and I hope that you tune in then. Until then, I will see you tomorrow.